Live without a snappy opening, it is the People Square. I'm your producer, Borzoi, and as with me as always is Eric Stryker. Take it away, Eric.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of The People's Square. Today I have a very special guest. I have Thomas Rousseau, the leader of Patriot Front, and he wants to come on to talk about some of the stuff. We want to have a conversation about some of the stuff that his organization has been subjected to, the lies, the politically motivated persecutions. The latest one, of course, is this black guy. I mean, let me pull up the article. So this black guy, this gay looking Jar Jar Binks looking black dude, is going around saying Patriot Front assaulted him on the Saturday 4th of July march they did in Boston. Thomas actually has footage from the incident showing no such thing. Imagine my shock. So welcome, Thomas. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. It's another great opportunity to talk with you and, be on the square. I'm always happy to show up, and we have a lot of news to cover. Everything from, I'm sure we can go over some of the things that happened at our Memorial Day event, then leading up to the events in Idaho, and now the crescendo of the summer, obviously Independence Day and everything that went on in Boston. So there's quite a lot to discuss.
Yeah, I mean, I actually do want to talk to you about some other things because, I was, there's a big FOIA dump of FOIA Freedom of Information Act documents were dumped not long ago, about a week ago, about Patriot Front in Idaho, and literally thousands of documents related to your arrests and so on. And there's interesting stuff I found in there that I haven't gotten around to putting on paper, but I did talk about it on Strike and Mike on how, like, the FBI is like they're basically criminalizing people that engage in their First Amendment rights. So people that put up posters and stickers, something that last I checked is the quintessential definition of what Thomas Paine did during the American Revolution and presumably was fighting for when he gave out common sense. It was basic thing protected by the First Amendment. And these people are just completely stepping out of bounds, trying to criminalize what is effectively peaceful dissent. And they are throwing all kinds of wrenches in your way to try and, hurt you guys or try and make you guys look like the evildoers and you're actually the good guys. Is that a fair assessment, Thomas?
That would be a more than fair assessment. Obviously, law enforcement of all branches is ever wanting to criminalize legal activity because the ultimate goal is to have every single person on the continent in some stage of the legal process. They want everybody on parole. They want everybody with tickets. They want everybody with records. They want everybody with their fingerprints, and they want everybody, giving money to their local precinct or whatever it is, because I guess that's just how it goes with all the kickbacks. And, this year we've made national, even international news several times. And, the spotlight can also be quite the heat lamp. But I'll tell you, we can take the heat and we keep coming back because everything that they're doing just doesn't seem to work because we are obviously committed and motivated. And when you get down to it, all of these things, it's just harassment. It is petty. Yes. And you realize just how ridiculous these people are. Once you get past the air of authority with the uniforms and the badges and all that stuff, you realize that these are just a bunch of fat desk jockeys, and it makes it a whole lot easier to stand up to it.
The uniforms, I mean, the change in the FBI in the last, say, 5 years, from my understanding from the movies, I mean, it's literally another Antifa group at this point. And I saw the other day that they mobilized the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force because some college kid scrawled a swastika in a bathroom stall. Now, this is like childish mischief that goes back probably since the swastika was invented by the motherfucking by Buddha thousands of years ago. And the feds went and they mobilized all these federal resources, started pinging cell phones, all this and that, and they finally found the person, the bathroom swastika scrawler. I mean, this is what they're wasting their fucking money on, and I find it to be absolutely just preposterous. So after a certain point, once they're harassing everyone, it stops being scary, and it's just another act in the circus called America. It's not something for people to fear. You have to be confident in what you're doing is morally correct, and that you will be vindicated, and we all will. These are just little barriers in our way before our victory. But anyway, let me just read from this article before we play the relevant video. It says, man in apparent white supremacy. Of course, the local news in Boston is blaring this out, trying to make it catch. Man in apparent white supremacist march assault pushes Boston for clarity. So basically, this guy teamed up with a bunch of activists and lawyers to try and push the police, who know no crime was committed, to kind of compel the local police to do something. Trust me, they would love to do something if they had even an iota of evidence of wrongdoing, but they can't. But they're going to try anyway. That's how leftists do. It says here, a local activist and artist is demanding action from Boston police after he was apparently assaulted by a group of white supremacists who marched in the city this weekend. Charles Morrell, who is black, of course he capitalized black in this, spoke briefly after meeting, so they lowercase white and capitalized black, of course, spoke briefly after meeting with Mayor Michelle Wu, where he and a group of advisors called for an independent investigation around what they said is the failure of officers that were present to intervene during the assault or make arrests. So just real quick, Thomas, the officers themselves saw this supposed confrontation or incident, right?
Yes, there were a number of officers that had followed us. And note that this is the end of our march. We had already been in the city for maybe an hour and a half about this point, and we had traversed over 2 miles of downtown. We had passed thousands of pedestrians by this point, of all shapes and sizes. You had tourists, you had families, you had people of every ethnicity on the planet, I imagine. And this was within a block of our destination. And, you know, you'll see it in the video, but this man comes out of nowhere. But anyways, so there were police following us by this point, and there were 2 undercover cops who you will be able to see in the video as they come out and they flash their badges. And there were a number of other bike police who are, of course, wearing the high-vis black and yellow garments, and they come up towards the end of the confrontation, and they finish the diffusing by taking Mr. Morrell and setting him aside, where then I believe EMTs came to check on his boo-boos, which were, of course, self-inflicted by him, furiously wailing on the shields that were present.
Right.
So yes, they came, but there were only a few of them at that time. We heard reports that they were trying to amass many, many more police in the city to do something just to have them ready on standby. But we were able, of course, to peacefully and orderly exit the city. Throughout the march, every time we came upon an officer, whether we were stationary at the train platform or at the station or during the march while we were getting our gear, we made sure, and I personally made sure, to walk up to the officer and say, just to let you know, peaceful political demonstration, First Amendment right. We have no weapons. We intend no violence, no harm to persons or property. I make sure to say that as often as I can. And most of them seemed to get it. And they're kind of Boston cops, and they don't really care as long as they don't have to directly intervene. But yes, you will be able to see what happens in the video when the police jump in.
People often say with my group, NJP, they say, and I think you guys do the same thing, like, why don't you announce that you're going to the protests? Well, very simple. There's 2 things. One, there are trained activists that exist want to like feign injuries and cause confrontations, not because they can win the fight, but so that we're forced to defend ourselves, and then like they can go run to their Zionist media masters and other lawyers and stuff to try, and politicians to try and kind of manufacture, gin up some sort of criminal conspiracy or something. And number two, this is the most important. When you show up and you engage in your First Amendment rights according to every law in the book, the cops are trained to respect your rights as a rule. Now, when it comes to us specifically, pro-whites and nationalists, what happens is that the police are told, if they know in advance of these marches, they're told by their superiors, either in Washington, at the Department of Justice, the local U.S. attorney, or the mayor, to create problems for us. In other words, they'll say things like, don't intervene if people attack them. Make sure to move them in a specific way to try and trigger some sort. I mean, we saw this in Charlottesville. I mean, you and I were both there, and we saw full well what happens when you do the permit thing. The cops literally set traps for you to make sure to intervene with your civil liberties. And we saw this in Charlottesville when the police basically ushered nationalists into crowds of anarchists that, of course, you know what's going to happen. So
they tried to do it again in Philadelphia.
Yes, exactly. So we can't, when we go and do these rallies for now, until we figure out some way to, get lawyers to fix this or figure out some way for the political climate to change or something. For now, we have to show up unannounced, because if we announce in advance, they simply will not respect our rights. So, but because they're trained to, if you don't announce it, they just say, oh, this is a protest, we're supposed to respect their rights. And so they sometimes they do. So anyway, let's play footage from this supposed assault of this man, Morell.
Boston leaders are denouncing the visit from a white supremacist group that marched through the streets of Boston over the weekend. This comes as we hear from a man who says he was assaulted by members of the Patriot Front.
He told police he was first shoved around, eventually knocked down, then hit and kicked.
We commend the mayor for an apology. She said she feels sorry.
Charles Morell evoking a song written long ago about African-American repression.
They killed another man.
Let's go around him.
Don't fucking talk to me like that, you fucking racist piece of shit. Take it easy. Get the fuck. Move. Hey, move. Take it easy. Y'all in the fuck. Y'all fucking tell me. Keep going. Take it easy. Take it easy. Go. Keep moving. There you go. I dare you to fucking keep moving. Get the phone. Hey, get out of here. Go home. Fuck yourself. Get the fuck out of here. Stay back. Relax. Get back. Get back. Excuse me. Back up. They killed another man.
Oof.
So quite the incident there. And
not exactly kissed by a rose with this guy and his singing.
No, but you can see clearly he walks straight towards everybody, and the guys stop and start moving around him. He gets closer, and then people ask him, take it easy, go around, de-escalation, right? He says, don't talk to me like that. Don't tell me to relax. I am not going to relax. I am going, and then implying that he is going to start fighting. And then he inserts himself into the ranks, and then he is pushed over to the side because we do not want to surround this man. We do not want to engage with him in this fashion. And then he starts begging people to hit him. And it is the most insane thing. And their narrative, the police or the mayor's narrative, is that we marched with 100 men over 2 miles through the city. And this just so happened to be the first black man that we saw. And we decided to enact our masterful plan of who knows. But what really happens is he takes several opportunities to reassert his attacks, against the shields, flailing and pushing and screaming, begging people to hit him, which is not the words or the demeanor of somebody who seems like they're the victim. And he is completely bound up by emotion. He has no sense of his surroundings or rationale. And, obviously, after enough attempts to try to hurt people, and they don't work because these guys are disciplined, these guys are protected, and they are not going to engage with him in a fight because that's what he wants. The police eventually come, and, I think the video broke up a little bit there, but you have cover cops, they flash their badges and they start kind of pushing, and the police start kind of pushing, and they separate everybody. But at that time, things had already cooled off. But you see very clearly that goes against the narrative that he was pushed to the ground and then kicked, which is ridiculous.
No, I mean, this is the age-old story. They are trying to provoke a confrontation. Well, first of all, this is clearly a person who's off his rocker. It's clearly a crazy person. Second, it's clearly a political activist. And third, there's no doubt in anyone who's seen this video's mind that this is, you guys were over the top and restrained when dealing with this character. And it's because you're disciplined and that's exactly what he wants, like you said. So you didn't give him what he wants. The mayor and these people, they're going to bitch about this for a while, but I think that, I could be wrong.
There's a reason.
Nothing's going to come out of this.
There's a reason you've only, on all of these news videos, so they had security camera footage, and there were 2 journalists there. I'm not sure if you can see them in the video, but there's 2 journalists there firing away on their cameras, which is where those 2 photos come from. You see the one photo of him, with arms stretched overhead, clawing at a man's face. And you see another photo of him, with being pushed away after that, because obviously these activists do not want men clawing at their face. Those are the 2 undercover cops there. If you'll notice them, that's what actual feds look like, by the way. They're not wearing khakis, I believe. But anyways, of course, jokes aside, but there's a reason you only see those 2 photos, because any actual video footage kind of exonerates any of these activists from, and as soon as, you see these police come and they start telling guys to get away. And of course they do, because we're not out here to fight the cops. We're not out here to fight random pedestrians, and everything disperses and things are entirely orderly after that. And
so
this guy, go ahead.
I actually recognize that Fed in the black. That is FBI, Boston office, FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force agent Andrew Creed, who is up to a lot of no good in that area. Let's just leave it at that.
I wouldn't believe it.
And he's done a lot of really shady stuff in that area, going back to 2013, 14. He's very well known and very prolific. And his role in the FBI is a mystery, because he actually is on the Joint Terrorism Task Force of I could be mistaken, but it looks just like him. He's on the Joint Terrorism Task Force of the Boston Police. So he's a deputized Boston police officer working for the FBI, not a formal agent. But what's interesting about him is that he pops up he goes after leftists too, by the way. And he's a shady character, but yeah, there's obviously no crime there, but yeah, he was definitely following you guys around to see what was up, and even he says that you guys aren't doing anything wrong. So, I mean, what more can they do with this? You know?
It is a massive conundrum where they think they're getting these arguments that we are. Again, so the idea is that we marched all the way through town to start a 100-on-1 fight with a guy whose only quote unquote injuries are on the knuckles of his dominant fist. It is ridiculous. It is fundamentally, categorically ridiculous. And, like you said, this guy is an activist. This guy is a social media personality. He is a local micro celebrity, probably more of a regular celebrity now. This is the best thing that's ever happened to him regarding his career. Now he's bumping shoulders with police chiefs and local candidates for Senate or State House or what have you. He's having meetings with the mayor where he's the one in charge. It's up to him whether or not he accepts or does not accept the apologies of all of the other ethnic groups in the city now. So it is very clear that he has, and he gets to do this beautiful performance with his African garb. But of course, it's clear that he saw an opportunity when we were marching past. Having been in the city, he had probably heard that there was some sort of demonstration going on. And he took this as an opportunity to catapult his, social media celebrity. And, that's what he did. And it's working out very well for him. But, the truth of the matter is that he just decided to get into a scuffle with people. And that's really it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, the fact that the literal FBI JTTF guy is there breaking up the fight and telling him to go his own way, not arresting or taking anyone in. That alone shows you that nothing is going to come out of this. So, this is a nothing burger. It doesn't seem to be going past the local news. Usually, when an incident like this is going to be a problem, you're going to see it published in the Washington Post or New York Times. That's when the big Jews, that's how they put out the bat signal to their pawns in Washington and elsewhere to do what they say. They're not doing it here, frankly, because a lot of people are pretty sick of this stuff. They're sick of these types of prosecutions. They're sick of these people like that crazy black guy getting attention. And, I think it's just nothing will come out of this. The video, the fact that you guys film everything, I think is also really important for anyone out there doing political activism. Film everything, because in this country, under America's race regime, a black man's word counts for 10 times that of a white man's word. And if you're a pro-white man, make that 100 times. So the fact that it's on tape, that he's the aggressor, that you guys are restraining yourselves, I mean, there's nothing that's going to come out of this, period. So anyway, you said you had more videos?
No, that's what we got right now.
Okay.
Obviously, we've been stressed for time, but it's the hypocrisy, as you said, is outstanding, because I think, nearing half a dozen to a dozen other people of African descent were killed by, in the city by, gun violence or, gang violence, or, bottom line is they were murdered and homicides. But nobody is saying, nobody's out there having the mayor talk about them. Those families aren't getting press conferences. They're not getting apologies from the mayor or stuff. But instead, this guy, this activist, this social media dude is the one getting all the attention because he had some Band-Aids on his knuckles from punching up shields. Again, ridiculous, and it doesn't seem like it's moving beyond this. And we are very happy to leave this behind us because they want to focus on this, because they don't want to mention that we proceeded very peacefully and orderly through the city for 2 miles. We handed out tons of flyers. We actually got a very considerable amount of support, or at the very least with, plenty of pedestrians. There's lots of tourists who come from all over the world to see these revolutionary sites. And, I'm sure a lot of those tourists go back to China and they just think that's what America is, because that would be a happy conclusion on my part. But we handed out lots of flyers. You had young guys coming up to us, saying all sorts of words of support. You had people clapping and being very interested. And, obviously you had the people spitting bile, you had the people shouting all sorts of disgusting, disgusting things. But, that's what you get. But we were able to make an impact on thousands and thousands of people in the city. Boston was teeming with pedestrians all throughout the park, the downtown, all of the tourist sites and the businesses and the shopping centers. And there were very few people in that city that did not hear about Patriot Front that day, especially considering the drum was echoing through the streets and the chants were just bouncing off all the walls of the big skyscrapers. It was an amazing demonstration, really cut and clean, perfectly done. I sincerely, and I'm really happy that it went so well because we were able to learn a lot from what happened in Idaho. Obviously, some of the things. Go ahead.
You mentioned the shootings in Boston. I mean, I don't know if you've been following this, but the homicide clearance rate, the rate in which they even make an arrest for a homicide, is currently at the lowest in American history. So in 1966 and 67, 90% of murders were solved. 2020, less than 50%. And that's just tumbling down further and further, just as homicides are going up. So this is an actual crisis where, black people themselves, black, white, brown, whatever, are being murdered, and no one is catching the murderer. The police aren't actually catching the murderer. The feds, who probably could help quite a bit in solving these sometimes mass shootings with no suspect, they are busy stalking you guys as you engage in your First Amendment rights. I mean, this country is sick.
Don't forget they're stalking bathroom stalls for offensive graffiti.
Right. I mean, this is pathetic, man. I mean, this is a pathetic country. But yeah, I mean, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Coeur d'Alene. So
sure,
you guys were arrested there on charges that, if you see the video, they have a video on their Telegram from that time where, of course, again, what saves Patriot Front, they film everything. You can hear Thomas in the U-Haul saying, "Everyone, mind your P's and Q's." I mean, pardon if I'm giving out secrets from the organization. You can't even say bad words in Patriot.
We do our best not to. Obviously, people, on their own time. But that was something that was very much expressed, and I was very emphatic with everybody leading up to that action that we do not want to incite anything.
Thomas, you there? Did you cut out, Thomas? Oh, Borzoi.
Yeah, I think we lost him there for a second. Let
Okay.
me put my.
He'll be back.
I got the. Yeah, I'm sure he'll be back in a second here.
Yeah.
We're playing no don't touch right now with the boy and the computer. Like, no, that's no.
Yeah, I mean, the idea that Patriot Front was going to riot in Coeur d'Alene, aside from their long storied number of protests or corpus of protests, where they literally go out of their way to obey the law in ways that no other street organization would ever be able to do. That's how disciplined they are. Oh,
We got him back now.
back, Thomas?
Hello. Yes, I believe I am.
Yeah. No, I was just saying that the idea that you guys were conspiring to riot, which famously, as we know from the Abby Hoffman case in the 60s, leftists themselves will tell you, when you are charged with conspiracy to riot, it's because someone with power doesn't like your political beliefs. It's a phony charge to destroy protest and suppress protests. So you guys were charged with conspiracy to riot, but in your footage that you guys published, you are in there, the leader, telling everyone in the U-Haul truck as you travel to the protest site in Coeur d'Alene, don't use bad words, don't antagonize, ignore anyone antagonizing you. Make sure you follow the plan to peacefully march, and just the complete, like the platonic opposite, the platonic perfection of obeying the law, like something that like even a lawyer wouldn't be able to get all around to. That's what you're discussing on your way to the protest, and these pigs come and they take you out and they point AR-15s in your face, take you out like you're freaking Al-Qaeda going to the World Trade Center. And like just embarrassing, trying to embarrass you guys. The purpose of which, of course, was to just put your information out there so that everyone could harass you. What's going on with that case? I mean, I'm assuming they're going to drop it. They have no choice, really.
I certainly hope so. Obviously, I can't go into too many details, but we are going to do everything we can to, defend and assert the right to peaceably assemble of our activists. And of course, we're going to do our best to go for the best possible outcome. Beyond that, I can't really give any details about, lawyers or cases or whatever. There is some items being generally reported publicly as they are going through the paperwork process, and it is a massive process of paperwork, which I think wasn't originally understood by the local authorities, just how much filing and faxing was going to be involved, but that's what they get. So anyways, we're going to be going through that, and I am very confident that it is going to be a footnote, and there is going to be an instance where it is all dropped, and that's the end of it. And it's just quietly, of course, swept under the rug because nobody will want to, none of them will want to talk about that. But things look very good. Obviously, we do not ever go into any instance intending to cause violence like some people are so wont to claim. The shields are purely defensive. These big clunky metal shields are not meant for swinging around. That's not how they work. They're not built for that. They are built for an occasion like you see in the video where somebody is aggressively coming up, and provided we didn't have the shields, right? In order to keep our guys from being struck, it would just look like a fight. In order to keep somebody at distance, it would just be a fist fight to anybody who could see it. But because we have these shields, it is a very obvious, forgive my white and black dynamic, where he is obviously the aggressor. He is obviously coming up several times. He goes back and he comes forth. He goes back and he comes forth. He begs them to hit him, and nobody hits him. So he starts hitting because he just really wants hitting to happen, but it won't happen. So obviously, I think, and I even think these incidents in Boston will go a long way to prove just how highly we regard peaceful conduct, because we are capable of making a huge splash in promotional aspect, in proving our works and proving our message to be worthwhile without any violence. In fact, I think it's better without it, far better without any instances of violence. But of course, the media are so wont to pick up on this because they get the crucial angle of this very flamboyantly dressed black. Well, actually, he does identify as a woman, in case y'all weren't wondering. But they get to run that story.
To me, that he's a woman.
It's very obvious.
I would say so. Let me talk a little bit about what I saw in the FOIA documents from the Coeur d'Alene police office and their conversations and emails with the local leeches at the FBI and the local fusion center. So this is actually my understanding. I'm not sure if you've looked through these documents closely, but I did out of journalistic interest. And here's what they say. So my understanding of what happened when they arrested you guys is that the local FBI agent and the local fusion center sent the Coeur d'Alene police chief a memo saying that some group called like Patriot Guard or something like that, which is like a pro Donald Trump MAGA.
There's a local group called Panhandle Patriots, I believe.
Yes, that's what it was. So that group, the Fusion Center, was saying that they were planning to go to this drag queen grooming hour on their motorcycles to fight people. So that was the memo they got. My understanding is that the dumbass cop getting dumbass intelligence, crap intelligence, thought that you guys were that group. And that's why this moron arrested you guys for conspiracy to riot, because he got a memo from the feds saying that this other group, Panhandle Patriots, was planning to go to riot. So that's actually my understanding. I don't actually think that police chief had any clue who the hell you guys even were, to be honest. He was just getting bad intelligence from people that don't know what they're doing in the FBI. And that's how this whole kind of misunderstanding happened, which is probably why the case will be dropped. So, I mean, I don't know. Did you look at any of those documents?
I've certainly looked at a lot of things regarding the outcomes, and we've certainly looked into the notion, and it is clear they didn't know that we were going to be there. The local, militia type organizations didn't know we were going to be there. The local opposition, the LGBT whatever people, they didn't know that we were going to be there, and our appearance was, as it always is, a surprise, and that just happened to be a surprise that they were hoping for somebody else. But and that other group had made some statements which probably caught the eye of law enforcement entities, things alluding to that they were. I'm not going to say that they were planning any violence. I don't think they were. Obviously, I'm sure. I'm sure it was just another political demonstration, and I'm not actually sure what they ended up, if they ended up showing up or where else they were, because my perception of events was, of course, very limited because it was mostly relegated to the back of a squad car. But I think it is. I think it is just a huge example of these federal agencies, then passing it down to local and county agencies who are just so bent up with this hatred of anything which might infringe upon their choice weapons for cultural destabilization, namely the hoisted up upon a pedestal Black victim, as well as the unassailable drag queen who can do no wrong while he/she molests children left or right. These are their choice weapons. These are their cultural bludgeons, and they will use every single resource at their disposal to defend them.
And the Great Awakening in 2020, summer 2020, has accelerated this kind of ideological discipline in the local cops. So the FBI has always been anti-white. FBI has always been full of libtards in recent years, particularly since Obama put in diversity quotas and LGBT quotas in the FBI and DHS. And so they don't hire as many, say, military veterans. Now they hire a lot of like libtards from Wesleyan at the FBI. So they've always hated us. They hate white people. They hate America. It is what it is. They're also more incompetent, by the way, than the original G-men, but that's another story. Like all affirmative action. But nevertheless, the local cops, generally speaking, historically, and I've been politically organizing for many, many years now, local cops tend to be a lot less politicized. However, with the Great Awakening, there have been mass resignations and also firings of cops that might not be on the woke side. So a cop that goes on his Facebook and criticizes the insane riots that took our country hostage for 3 months straight in 2020, all of those cops that went on social media to say this is savagery, they're killing people, all of those cops got fired by their local police chief, their local mayor, and so on. So they've done, and the ones that didn't get fired just resigned. And so what's going on is that now you have a lot of assholes, particularly in the higher echelons of police departments, like in Coeur d'Alene, where the police chief in Coeur d'Alene, I forget his name, but he was like basically left Seattle, probably because of the extremely anti-police atmosphere in Seattle. But he still retains a lot of his libtard training and his, his desire to be famous, his desire to get kudos from elites. If you look at those FOIA documents, 90% of the emails that he was getting were from national media outlets saying things like, one of them was a guy with an Israeli name from CBS, and he's like, "Oh, police officer Lee, I think it's Lee Davis." He's like, "Officer Lee Davis, I want to bring you on CBS to talk about your heroic bust of the neo-Nazis." And so, long story short, there's an incentive for these people of low moral caliber, people with no respect for the constitutional rights, no respect for people's rights to speak or protest. These people are increasingly in charge of even relatively conservative districts in Idaho. I mean, this is a big problem, don't you think?
It is absolutely a big problem, and it's one of the driving, moments of inspiration for our public activism, because public activism turns the public space into public discourse, right? When a lot of people are against what's happening with the police. Actually, the police are running into fewer and fewer allies as things goes on. Even some conservatives manage to pry themselves away from this statist mentality. But being in the public, changing the public space and the landscape puts an amount of weight on this sort of police encroachment, this tyrannizing effect that online speech does not. And you can speak out against it online, and you can get more people to have more of the right opinion online. But when it comes down to it, if you want to put weight against what they're doing, their laws are primarily extant in the physical space. And that is the space that we are contesting. That is the space that we are transforming. That is the space that we are ultimately casting our message alongside theirs. There was a moment in my speech where I said, should we be struck to show the tyrant's hand, so be it. And that was encapsulated very well in Idaho. And it was almost, to an extent, it was also evident in Boston with what happened with Mr. Morell. Because us taking the public space allows the contrast between what a nationalist, what a patriot, what a true American looks and acts like, how he maintains himself, and the insidious, the conniving, the acts of our opposition and the police and the mayors and all of these other figures, as well as just the complete deranged, frothing at the mouth opposition, screaming and wailing inconsolably, bound up with rage. It makes that contrast so evident. And I think that puts so much weight against that creeping, power drift of the police, which would ultimately take everything away from us, where you can't, might as well put an ankle monitor on everybody at that point.
I wanted to say also in those documents from Coeur d'Alene, the nefarious role that the mayor, Steve Widmeyer, who appears to be like deeply in the pocket of local Jewish groups. There was one instance from last year where someone from Patriot Front put up a sticker that says "Better dead than red" or something like that.
Heaven forbid.
Yes, and Steve, and so this actually gives us a great sneak peek into how how politicized law enforcement in the United States has become. It's purely political and anti-white now. So what happened was Widmeyer got two emails were happening at the same time. I want to get back to the bad intelligence that the FBI got and where they got that intelligence from in a minute. But let's talk about Widmeyer for a second. So there are emails to the police chief in Coeur d'Alene from Widmeyer, where he forwards an email from some sort of extremist gay activist, some kind of transgender activist group called the Human Rights Alliance or something like that. And one of these libtards found the Better Dead Than Red and Patriot Front stickers. So what they did is they got with they had a meeting with the mayor and the local FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force over this. And they fucking conducted an investigation into who put up the sticker that says "Better Dead Than Red." And the FBI couldn't find who did it. And the mayor was having a back and forth with the police chief saying, you have to find out who's putting up these stickers. Make this a priority to find out who's putting up stickers, First Amendment protected stickers. And he said that he gave it to the FBI, but they're not doing their job. You're local. You know the people in the community better. Go and find who these people are. So like just a hysterical emails over and over, like just bombarding this police chief's inbox with demands and pressure to like waste taxpayer money on finding out who put up a Better Dead Than Red sticker on a lamp pole. And Furthermore, what I want to say about the Panhandle Patriots thing, the FBI got this intelligence. Guess from who? They got it from a group called Redoubt Antifa. So Antifa, there's an Antifa group on the internet that sits around trolling on our Telegram channels in the comments and chat rooms, especially the ones that have poor security, which are like the Donald Trump ones. And they were collecting screen caps and collecting information about people posting, like, you know, kind of boomer tier, like, oh, if they come near my kids, I'm going to kill them, you know, that kind of stuff in that Panhandle Patriots chat. And they were sending this to an intermediary who had a direct link to the FBI office in Coeur d'Alene. So what do we gather from this? Well, the big, bad, rebellious communists and anarchists are basically they are interns for the FBI, giving them spying for the FBI. That's what they do now. And they were sending all this information to these intermediaries, which are these like fake NGO groups full of libtards. And they forward it. They know that this is happening. They forward it to the FBI saying, hey, there's a threat to the Drag Queen Story Hour. We got all this information from Antifa. They said it in the email. And then that bad intelligence gets pushed down to the local level and leads to peaceful demonstrators from Patriot Front getting arrested on false charges. I mean, what do you make of that, Thomas?
It seems almost cliche at this point to point out that these Antifa groups are, you know, unpaid interns. They are just feeder groups for intelligence that immediately gets handed off to corporations, to law enforcement entities, and they are no more rebellious than the system they serve. These people are entirely subservient to corporate interests trying to get people fired, as well as these police organizations or law enforcement entities trying to put people in jail. They are perpetuating the very totalitarian monolith their ideology proclaims themselves to be against. And police show that they can't enforce, you know, this civil peace, right? There's riots, there's people hysterical, you know, raging around in the streets, you know, shooting up all this, you know, parades and you know, you like you had in Waukesha, you have people driving through crowds of marchers. The country is not safe. And the police don't care about making it safe because all that they have, they're transfixed on the works and the actions of nationalists, the only people in the room trying to propose solutions. And all the while they're looking at nationalists, that legitimacy, that is the air of, you know, authority that makes those badges more than just pieces of metal that give them some importance, it's being chiseled away by this civil discord, by this, you know, these riots, and by these groups like Antifa, these anarchists who are running around harassing and ruining the lives of innocent, virtuous men. So what we need to do as organizers, as activists, as people espousing virtue, we need to create these revolutionary spaces where we can carve out a little piece of the world and we can practice life as it's meant to be lived. We can show men that there is a world that we can build where the people you can meet, you know, brothers that you meet, families, communities that you can be a part of, right, are not a part of this insanity. We are separate. We are practicing a different set of rules. They're rules that we proposed, that we created for ourselves, and they're based in morality. All their laws are just based in their desire to perpetuate power and subjugate the nation and, you know, export any amount of, you know, resources we have to their paymasters and all that stuff. But our rules are bound to universal moral truths. And if we create spaces in which we practice our own rules of virtue, ultimately, once that legitimacy is chiseled away to the breaking point, once that tax base that they rely on, all those really wealthy boomers, once they start getting just a little bit too up there in age or just a little bit too down there in patience, there's going to be a turning point. There's going to be a tipping point where it becomes clear that the roots of society have to be refixed to moral virtue, or else there's no point in having any liberty at all. Go ahead.
It's already there. I mean, I think the Gretchen Whitmer plot was like the sheer failure that the FBI had. I mean, the idea, once upon a time, if you were a defendant in a criminal matter, a federal defendant, which by the way, they have like a 95 or more % conviction rate. Once upon a time, if you were a defendant in a trial like the Gretchen Whitmer one, where you have tons of FBI agents and informants testifying against you and stuff like that, like you would have just been convicted. And yet in that case, and this is definitely a turning point in respects to the court system, that case was a massive blunder and embarrassment for the FBI. And frankly, their own behavior is causing a massive credibility crisis, starting with literally trying to do a coup against the elected president, Donald Trump, to setting up political dissidents in Vlad Tepes leaving a bag of money in the street and waiting for someone to pick it up style. I mean, it's not even that. Like, it's more like leaving a bag of money on the street and then getting tons of people to encourage you to pick it up and pressure you and intimidate you into picking it up and then arresting you as a thief. Like that kind of stuff. People are sick of it. Ordinary people are sick of it. They see the FBI increasingly as a sort of Stasi or KGB style entity. And, people like some bad faith critics of Patriot Front and NJP and anything will say, well, you guys draw too much heat. So if you guys are doing political activism with your ideas, you're going to draw heat from law enforcement just because of your ideas. So I'm going to do this adjacent thing that's more conservative, more religious, whatever. The problem is, though, is that law enforcement entities, increasingly the local police, but the FBI in particular, they're so off the rails, they're so crazy, and they're so incompetent that if you're at a conservative Bible study group, there's actually probably a better chance due to low OPSEC that you're going to have an undercover FBI agent sitting next to you. This actually happened in one case of a man in Virginia, Vietnamese man, not even white, who was part of a conservative Bible study group, and an undercover FBI agent got in the Bible study group. This is like 2 years ago, and basically started surveilling him and stuff, and then framed him for talked him into making a Molotov cocktail and arrested him on federal explosives charges. This is at a Bible study group. And then we have instances like the Proud Boys and other kind of alt-right, conservative, and MAGA tier stuff where there are tons and tons of FBI agents, possibly more, because again, lower OPSEC in those groups. So there's actually no, unless you want to be a member of Antifa or a member of a supporter of Drag Queen Story Hour, there's actually no way to be politically active in this country without having to endure or have the stench of federal agents around at all. And I think that is actually one of the things that has strongly discredited federal law enforcement in this country. I mean, we saw it also with the CRT parents, the moms that were protesting the fact that their children were being taught systematically to hate white people, to hate their own race. The FBI was opening up investigations into these moms at PTA meetings. So this is actually why, you should not allow federal law enforcement and the potential of interaction with them or them stalking you or harassing you to dissuade you from getting involved. One, because we're doing the right thing and this work needs to be done. And number two, unless you want to be some sort of completely depoliticized sports fan, they're going to be around no matter what, harassing you, potentially more so if you're in a boomer tier conservative group. So keep that in mind when choosing how to get politically active. I mean, last thing I'll say, when the Russian conflict started, the Russian Orthodox Church in America has literally nothing to do with the Russian government in no meaningful way. It's just, they're just Christians. And people were complaining that there were FBI cars, FBI SUVs and cars, like setting up Stingray devices to capture communications and stuff outside of the churches. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that happened in the Soviet Union. Like spying on Christian churches? Are you fucking kidding me? So this is actually where we're at in this country. It's not something you can escape through any sort of linguistic trickery or any sort of facade or anything. It's just work we have to do and barriers we have to push through.
Absolutely. And I think, a huge statement about especially groups like ours, where we are beyond conservatism. We are beyond the sort of milquetoast opposition to the way things are going. And if they can do it to us as relative radicals, then they can do it to the next person and the next person and the next person, all the way down the line, until if you make a snide comment on the latest drag queen, commercial being shoved down your throat, then you could have somebody monitoring your communications. And we know this. We know that we are in the front of the line and at the top of the list. So we practice a discipline and a caution in our actions that makes us safe, because we're aware that they don't like us. We're aware that there's a risk, that we're aware that there's a threat, because we don't deny it. You'll see people that go and they say, okay, I'm gonna step a few rungs down on the ladder towards the conventional, and they just act like they're not in the crosshairs anymore, and they're not as safe anymore because they don't know. They are putting themselves into a state of denial. The heat is still on them. They just can't feel it. And if somebody is really concerned and they just think, man, my personal safety is the most important thing to me, then you know what? You can have it. You just can't pair it with any sort of contest or protest or dissent to what the government or any of its willful minions is doing. And if you aren't willing to give that up, then you're going to have to come to terms with sacrificing a portion of your safety, because terrible things, evil, is worth fighting. That is the nature of evil, to be worth your whole life, to conquer it, to wipe it off the earth, to make the world a better place, to influence change.
Yes.
And
there's no guarantee that being depoliticized will protect you or your family either. I mean, Jupiter Paulson in Fargo was walking to her mother's house and was murdered for no reason by a black. So like the day-to-day hazards of living as a white person in America are actually already extreme. And as the sort of net for what you can and cannot say expands, you get to the point where people that say things like all lives matter are now getting fired. Well, we're getting fired from their jobs. So this is something that's not going away on its own. We have to make it go away. We have to battle it. There's no in nature, problems don't just disappear because you just ignore them. You have to fix them. And the fact that they put so much pressure and so much barbed wire and mines around the solutions to these problems is just evidence, self-evident, that these are the solutions. We are the only ones that have the solutions to these problems. So yeah. Now, what is morale like in your organization under all of these pressures? Is it high?
One of the most wonderful things to see is that outside pressure only causes the ranks to close, right? It only makes us stronger. We have seen many, many men who have been in the face of these pressures, whether it's, some of the men who got arrested, some of the men who have been doxxed, anything like this. It only makes them realize why we're doing what we're doing. This is a conception deeply held in the organization, that if you're going to take up the shield, if you're going to don the blue, that you know the risks and you know that the reason that they're attacking you is not because, oh, just because you stepped out of line, not because, oh, you're doing a bad thing. It's because they're evil. It's because you're standing up for something virtuous. And it's because, like you said, the world that we live in is getting more and more dangerous, and it's going to come for everybody at some point, unless
Yeah.
it's stopped. And where do you want to be when it gets to your community? Where do you want to be when that mob comes down your street? Do you want to be in a position where you have discipline, where you know how to act, where you are surrounding yourself with men of like minds and, causal mentalities? Or do you want to be one of those guys who just stuck his fingers in his ears and said, la, 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 it's not going to happen to me?
Yeah,
and you can do that up until the point where it does.
The atomized people that refuse to get politically organized and meet like-minded people, those guys actually are the most screwed of all. Because if you're at your job and you accidentally write something on your own time on social media, some freak, some nut job will screen cap it and send it to your boss and you're fired. Good luck finding another job. If you're in one of our circles, we employ each other. We work together. We help each other out. We raise money for each other. And what you were saying about the reason I asked about your group's morale is that one thing that did impress me about Patriot Front was that when you guys got out of jail, which I assume wasn't great to be in jail overnight, you guys were.
I've had better stays.
I don't know. Have you ever been to the Holiday Inn in New Orleans? I think I prefer a Coeur d'Alene jail cell.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yes. So, you guys were smiling. Like, I remember distinctly seeing that ghoul from the SPLC was like following you, basically flew to Idaho just to like troll you. And he was like following you guys around, like filming you and stuff. And he was like expressing rage on social media that you guys were like smiling and laughing and making jokes and stuff. Like, the best revenge is good living, my friend.
Of course.
This is what
it infuriates them.
Anytime, even if I'm not doing well, I have some problem in my personal life or something. Anytime someone asks me how I'm doing, especially when I'm doing a show or something, I always say I'm doing great, because I'll tell you what, that makes the enemy far more upset than, being down and out. That's the only thing. I mean, if you're working for the SPLC, you're not doing it for money. So, you're an internet content creator at this like discredited, dying organization. The only thing getting you out of bed in the morning, the only thing getting you to take a damn red-eye flight to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, is the prospect of seeing people who infuriate you for their mere existence smiling at you when you think they should be upset. So
yeah, and it's and like you said, all of these things that happen to us have only given us reason, because we aren't going to back down. We're not going to turn around. We're not going to stop. We're not going to run away. That's already understood. That is made clear, right? Our minds are made to that point. So the only solution then, when necessity arrives, is to innovate. If you get people fired, we'll get new jobs, and we'll get jobs that are more resilient to this. We're going to get job networks set up. You get people kicked out of their homes. You get people's lease agreements mess up. All right, we were going to create housing networks, and that's going to be more resilient, harder to find people's addresses, easier for people to live peaceful lives as activists, as organizers. And everybody understands that, what we do as activists, these guys are traveling all over the country. They're seeing amazing sights. They're having once in a lifetime experiences, I guess, if you're not an activist. But these guys are living to the heights of adventure. This resistance is a beautiful and wonderful experience, because it gives us such reason to have faith in what we do, and such reason to see and live, because the people that in these ranks, in these these networks that we have, they're not just people that think like you. That they are, but they are so much more than that, because you have borne attacks with them. You have traveled for 30 hours straight on the highway with them. You have gone, across the country back and forth and seen all that our nation has to offer, from the best to the worst, and you've done it side by side, following the same rules, under the same organizers, for the same cause, under the same banner. And that is a level of brotherhood that is completely impervious to their attempts to demonize, to make us fearful, to make us start doubting each other and ourselves. It is completely immune to that. It is the kind of brotherhood and the steadfast unions between men that created this nation. And it is the exact kind of brotherhood that is needed to save the nation.
Right. I totally agree with you. I mean, the reason why so many young white people end up, getting into heroin or, committing suicide or taking up all sorts of maybe self-destructive behaviors is that their lives are purposeless. They're going to live worse than their parents and even worse than their grandparents. They don't have any prospects. And so by giving life meaning through collective struggle, I mean, that is the most beautiful thing a guy in his 20s, 30s, and even beyond that can have. And so I totally agree with you. I mean, this is something that Zog has to sit and like ponder, because sometimes I think that we have, when you made the point before of like, they're going to come, if they start with us, they're going to come for you. And initially, several years back, I was like, and I think a lot of alt-right and conservative types also thought this. They're going to be like, okay, Jews are in charge. They know who the threat to their power is. They're going to surgically suppress and destroy the people that actually offer some threat to their power, but they're going to tolerate these sort of pits, these tar pits of white energy and time, like conservatism. But I was wrong. And the reason I was wrong is that Jews have to deal with stupid goyim, stupid morons like that police chief that doesn't know the difference between Panhandle Patriots and Patriot Front. That's something that, like, the incompetence of the people, like the people running the top, the thin film of Jews running America from the very, very tippity top, they actually are having trouble moderating and, getting competence out of the pawns and butt goys that they have in charge of these lower level institutions, middle manager types. And so what you have is another problem is the polarization of the liberals, where they start seeing all conservatives as Nazis. And so they take the lessons of militant democracy, which I urge everyone to read, this work by a guy named Karl Loewenstein, a German Jew from 1937, wrote this thing called Militant Democracy, which says that all those that reject the principles of liberalism shall not actually enjoy its protections in terms of civil rights. So after Charlottesville, America went into a militant democracy phase, or an anti-fascist emergency phase, where they decided they would suppress all of our civil liberties and rights. But the problem is that they've, like everything, they've overreached. And now basically what started off as a campaign to shut down, us, has been extended by overzealous commissars to like 50%, if not more, of the population. Something like that is not sustainable, which is why you're seeing this, like what like people call a vibe shift, the kind of decline of the Great Awakening happening. Now they're going to try to control the counter Great Awakening, but that's another story. But either way, like the Antifa stuff is on the way out. It's weaker than ever. Doxing is no longer meaningful in any way. It's not significant like it used to be. Like, okay, you lose your job, you get another one 3 months later. So a lot of changes for the better in the short term are happening. But nevertheless, we are facing an uphill battle that we are ready and eager to endure, because winning is that important, is it not, Thomas?
Oh well, there's not much of an alternative, right? When we say victory or death, we're not speaking in pure metaphor. And especially what you said when you're talking about these people who see all these things, these changes happening in society, and their solution is, well, we need to get trickier, we need to get more subtle, we need to start having these little secret schemes, and we need to make our optics, quote unquote, into some sort of elaborate ruse to unravel this big puzzle that is society. It's not really that hard. The trick is actually not a trick. It's integrity. It's being honest. It's being straightforward. People assume, in some people, fewer and fewer as the days and the years go by, that Patriot Front's, quote unquote, optics is some sort of scheme to trick people into liking us. But it's actually what we are. And anybody who follows through and joins and gets among the men realizes, man, this is exactly what I expected. This is exactly what the videos are like. These guys are who they say they are. They act how they say they're going to act. And that sort of transparency and integrity is completely intolerable for our enemies to use, because they are bound up in so many duplicitous lies that if they tried to practice 1/1000th of an iota of the integrity that we uphold on a daily, regular basis, their whole empire would just come falling apart. It would unravel under its own weight. So now, more important than ever, you need to stick to your convictions. You need to be forward with what you believe. You need to be honest, and you need to be loud. And that's what our activists are doing. That is why we're out there. And that's why, you and yours are doing your demonstrations as well. It's more important now than ever to show the sort of transparent integrity. It's not enough to just say these words, but we have to go out and be truth's champion. We have to stand with them, stand among them. And when we do that, we make the contrast so clear and the choice so much more easy.
And I'll tell you, and you've seen this too, people are ready to listen. Maybe 2 or 3 years ago, like say 2019 was a bad year for us. Like people were kind of spooked by all the government oppression and stuff like that. And they were like, I don't want to touch these politics. But after the overreach that they've done, I think people are realizing, like the article, I suggest everyone read it. I'm going to pimp my own stuff. The article I put up on the National Justice Party website about the history of the white classification, that if you're legal, hold on, sorry, I just ate a lot. Pardon me. If you're legally classified as white in the United States, you are at a massive disadvantage, not just in applying to universities, but in getting federal contracts, in getting many different types of jobs, in getting a small business loan, mortgages. Like you are, by law, if you are classified as white, like you can't go to court and say, well, I deserve that small business loan because I don't consider myself white. I consider myself Irish or Italian or Catholic or conservative or some other choose your own label. The U.S. government says clearly that you are a white person and thus a second-class citizen. So you have no way to escape that label. And so if you want to come up with some alternative, out there, some alternative definition of who you are in the eyes of the law, I mean, I don't even care if you want to call yourself a Southerner or a Northerner or whatever you want to call yourself, or a Catholic or a Protestant or a Trump supporter, whatever you want to call yourself. Like these things have already been settled in American federal and state courts. Okay. If you're Portuguese descended and you want to get a minority business contract from the state, this happened in Boston in 2018. There's like a couple of Portuguese owned construction companies, and they were making money over fist getting minority owned business contracts in the state of Massachusetts, to the point where they became the largest construction companies in the state, just to see how important these racial advantages are. Well, someone found out about this, and they argued in court that, well, we're Portuguese, we're technically Latino. The judge said, nope, you are legally white people. You will have these contracts stripped from your company, and now those companies are screwed. So this is how the law actually works. So if you're going to fight this discrimination, legally enshrined discrimination against who you are for who you were born as, a person of European descent, you have no choice but to embrace this label as in a political struggle to end this institutionalized discrimination against you. Like, there's no other choice. So you have to, if you don't like the state of affairs, and trust me, the state of affairs for people classified as white in the United States has gotten way worse as of late, both on the street and in the courts and in every other sector of American life. There's no way to escape this but to literally fight for state power and change it. That's it. That's all you can do. You have to fight them in the courts, fight them in the streets, legally, of course, not violently. And you have to put out the message out there, and white people are willing to listen. You know, when we go out there to Fargo or to Akron or to any other place in America where we go, where there's an injustice done to a white person, where a black that murders a white person is given like an insanity plea or let off the hook in some other way, we're going to go there and we're going to make a stink, and you're going to have to deal with us. And the people in the towns, there's a few people that don't like it, but the majority of people in the towns, they love it. They love that they finally have champions fighting for them. Okay. I mean, ultimately, also what I want to say is that don't be fooled by the Republican Party. It may look like they have the opposition controlled completely, but like I said on Telegram, if you actually look at polls, they're actually not capitalizing much off of Joe Biden's historic unpopularity, the Democrats' historic low polling numbers. The Republican Party, despite the unpopularity of the Democrats, the Republican Party has only like a 1 or 2 point statistical noise advantage in polls for key congressional races in several states. So they're not really benefiting off of it because they suck too. So we're going to have to build the real deal, and we're doing it. And we are on the streets, and no one is going to stop us. Is that not right, Thomas?
I would say that is pretty darn right. And, this whole, this summer, these last recent events, we've proven as an organization, with our Memorial Day event, we were able to put together all these workshops and seminars and speeches and training opportunities, as well as, competitions and tournaments, that we injected so much passion and so much just a desire to experience and to learn new things, that we've put that into action, right? And we've cemented even more so than ever that all of these men are fully committed, fully informed, and fully prepared, right? And, like you said, they can try all these methods of deplatforming, but ultimately the streets is where you need to start the fight, and the fight expands. The fight is a multifaceted opposition to what is going on. And, all of these, these keyboard warriors and Antifa that are sending their emails to the local police and the local sheriffs and all that stuff, they find themselves a lot harder to deplatform when they come up against a shield wall, right? It's not so easy then, because they're met with people in the flesh. And it's not just flesh, right? There's conviction, there's ideal, and there's a whole lot of metal. And that is the real difference between activism and doing not a whole lot else, right? So it's important that we really create the bonds that can only be created with the fires of activity, with the pressures of fighting against evil.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. So we do have, pardon me, Thomas, we do have some people sent in videos and super chats from last week. Sure. And I was on a bit of a timetable. I had to leave early, and I promised I'd play some of it for them. So Borzo, if you want to play some of the stuff from last week.
So I talked to Johnny as well, and I asked him to kind of restrict his videos this week. So we have 2 memory videos. and they're both at like under 2 minutes basically. So we won't.
Okay, yeah.
We're not
If
gonna-
it, just not long videos like 5 to 10 minutes actually take up a lot of time, but 2 minutes is fine.
So I forget what his message last week, but he also sent us another one this week. So I'll just read that quickly for $5.
Oh,
Glory to the NJP and PF. White Jamahuriya Eternal. Enjoyed this clip of Iranian officials talking about Zionist use of media as a weapon. But I'm going to start with the video from last week.
I think we just triggered about five different types of federal law enforcement surveillance departments.
I want to go on record and say I have no idea what that word means, but I appreciate his support nonetheless.
No, definitely. Thanks for that, man.
All right, so I think this is the one from last week. Qatari or at least this is the one he asked me to play. He sent me the link. So,
Okay.
Qatari sociologist, Zionist enemies of humanity fight the overturning of Roe v. Wade.
Man, I should do a sociology degree in Qatar. I'd probably be a professor.
Memory. All right. I gotta. Okay, we go. Qatari sociologist Dr. Abd al-Aziz whatever. There are conspiracies to reduce the human population. Among these laws, which they have legislated in stages, these people have a lot of patience. Roe v. Wade was passed in 1973, and now it is 50 years later. Go to Europe and see how the number of whites gradually goes down. The people you see now in Britain, France, and Europe are all immigrants from other races. They are not white. Who oppose the SCOTUS ruling now? The enemies of humanity. If you watch the TV channels right now, who runs those TV channels? Most of these channels belong to the Zionist lobby. They have launched fierce campaigns against the ruling that overturned the right to have an abortion. Even Biden, the top pimp, opposes the ruling. These people launch fierce campaigns against the court ruling. Why?
تنافي مخططهم القذر بتقليل عدد البشريه.
What was that last part? I didn't miss that completely. Paying attention. Because it interrupts their filthy scheme to reduce the human population. And then we have, I don't know if you wanted to comment to that or to go right to that one.
No, that is really on point. I mean, it goes to show you, like, just because someone isn't white doesn't mean that they're necessarily your enemy. They're actually like a lot of objective people, particularly in the Middle East, where they have the same enemy, who see what's going on to us and comment on it.
Well, what's funny to me is when non-white people see what's going on, and sometimes they understand the Jewish problem, sometimes they don't. It's really funny when they don't, because they scratch their heads because they'll just bluntly say, like, why are white people doing this to themselves? They don't, because they don't get it. They don't understand.
Right. What they would say is, like, why are these people in the West like trying to replace themselves? But what's interesting about like Iranian and like in some other parts of the Middle East is that they know exactly who's doing it, because to some degree they're doing it to them too, and it follows a similar pattern to what they're doing to them. So that's what I say. Like, you know, these people are not our enemies at all. The opposite, actually. They're you know, decent people have to acknowledge decent people wherever they are, and you know, this idea that everyone all over the world that's not white is some sort of enemy from the get-go is retarded. But anyway.
Well, I'll read you an excerpt from, there was a book I read called Spies of No Country by an Israeli named Maddie Friedman. And the book is basically about Mizrahi Jews that formed what was called the Arab sector, which was the Israeli intelligence during the 1948 Independence War, that pretended to be Arabs in order to fight the Arabs. But there were some interesting excerpts from the book. So I got this right here. Like, you know, remember, like, we're told, like, you know, like, this is 1948 uneducated Arabs. Like, they don't have like a kind of Western formal education. But
I also want to say one other thing too about that is look at how much free speech you have in the universities in the Middle East versus the United States.
Oh yeah.
There was a poll done recently, a study of American academics, and it said 44% of people with postgraduate degrees, aka professional academics are afraid to say what their research actually says. They feel pressure to lie about their social, biological, scientific research. And we know, so like if you ask, so in other words, there's a 50-50 chance that someone who specializes in the social or even regular sciences, that when they give you their expert opinion, that they are lying to you. They're not misinformed. They're lying to you because they're afraid of what would happen to them if they don't lie. So look at the state of our university and scientific system in the United States when you know these statistics. Anyway, go read the quote.
Yeah, so just for context, these are a bunch of Arabs on the docks of the city of Haifa in 1948. A bunch of smelly, brown, uneducated Arabs. We know what they saw because one of them, Ibrahim, kept a kind of diary. The workers he recorded are deeply impressed by the stubbornness, energy, and wealth of the Jews. They didn't see a tub full of wretched people whose families had just been murdered, whose prospects were so grim that their best option was a hostile beachhead of the Arab world. Instead, they saw a canny move by a powerful opponent. When one of the other workers saw the exodus coming into port, according to Ibrahim's record, the man said in amazement, "Where did the Jews get so much money?" "The Jews own America," another replied.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
1948, dock worker Arabs.
Well, pretty much any country where you're allowed to express that is the national consensus. Whether it's the Central Committee in China planning how to deal with the United States to Iran. But anyway, let's go to the next one.
All right, so the former Iranian diplomat Hossein Akbari, the Zionists control America, the media. I'm going to do the audio on this again. All right. Skip ahead here. Okay. So former Iranian diplomat Professor Hossein Akbari, expert on the Arab and Islamic world. I believe that America is an empire that belongs to the Zionists. If we want to know America well, we need to examine the roots of Zionism in terms of its ideology and its function as a tool. When everybody was chasing after gold and other types of wealth, the Zionists were looking to acquire media outlets. When was it? A long time ago. Today, the media is operating under Zionist control, not only in the US, but also in France, Europe, and everywhere. They are running the great volume of media, where the US is also playing a role. This does not mean that the Americans are creative or forged. If we do not look at its roots when we look at America, we will have to ask ourselves why we have not been able to demonstrate America's atrocities because of the Zionists. The Zionists today are taking everything into consideration. Even with regard to biological warfare, they think that 1 or 2 billion people need to be eliminated because the resources of our planet are scarce. Where and how do they make these plans? Where was this coronavirus all about? Was it accidental? Was it accidental or man-made? If it is man-made, then by whom? And what are their next steps? What are they after? Who knows what about it? That connected Zionist network, which includes many leaders of Western countries and even several leaders of Islamic countries. What do? This is their secret power. They put America in the forefront so that everybody would think that we need to confront it, America, which we do, but we must. What was that last part? But we must not neglect them, the Zionists.
Yep, there you have it. All right.
Yep. All right.
I mean, that's what a society that has real free speech looks like. I mean, that's actually people practicing. See, free speech is not the ability for a tiny percentage of freaks, of homosexuals and Jews that want to destroy society to, I mean, they have, I think they should have a right to speak their minds if they want, but they define free speech as like exclusively them commenting on things. But in countries that have more freedom, ordinary people can speak too. Well, imagine that. So, yeah, let's go to the next question.
Flying Dutchman donates $35. The founding fathers smiled over Boston last week. Antifa is part of the state apparatus. This should not be a surprise.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can find those Antifas. They're called Redoubt Antifa. When I get a chance, we're going to be, maybe they might be identified. Who the hell knows? But yeah, they're basically federal informants. I mean,
Yeah, I'm very optimistic.
the Antifa.
I'm very optimistic these people are going to be exposed.
Well, think of whether if you're an Antifa, you can have any opinion. So like the Fortune 500 CEOs hold the same exact cultural opinions as the communist activists on the street. And so that has a kind of solidarity in Antifa that I find that kind of makes all other ideological differences they may or may not have irrelevant. But yeah, they work together. They see it fit. I mean, we saw what happened in World War II. The rapacious capitalists of the British Empire bailing out the so-called vanguard of the proletarian in the Soviet Union against the Germans. I mean, how do you explain that using plain old superficial understandings of ideology? You can't explain it. So we have to just look at history rather than the supposed ideological differences these different groups that work together effectively say they have. Okay, so let's go to the next one.
Okay, Borzet donates $25. Hopefully, the tiny Borsling will be a future patriot from. Let me try this again. Hopefully, the tiny Borsling will be a future Patriot Front member. Hail victory!
There you go. You don't recruit.
We are
babies,
accepting
do you?
applications. We'll have to lower the age limit and make an exception for that one, but I'll see that he's passed through.
He'll probably pass. I mean, he's already wearing 2-year-old clothes. He towers over all the other babies. Like, this kid's gonna be 6 foot by the time he's 10. So he might.
I imagine he'll do well in the fitness standards. Then should be no issue.
Judging from what you tell me, Borzoi, he's a little undisciplined. He might be more of an NJP guy.
This is true. This is true. I mean, like he's got Uncle Stryker kind of wildness running through him. So.
Oh.
Does that make me Uncle Tom? Not sure where I fall in that that category. Anyways.
Well, I mean, I know my wife adores you, so yes, you can be Borsling's Uncle Tom.
Very good. Thank you. I'm honored.
You're a great example of your race, Uncle Tom.
I do my best.
Great example.
Ant donates $3 and just says 5.
Thank you.
I don't know what. Thanks.
Hey,
I mean, thank you for the
give me
donation.
5. I'll give you 5. There you go. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
I'm doing the Odyssey ones after all this because we tend to have fewer entropy donations. So one more entropy donation here. Glenn the Chinaman donates $5. Do you know China has a shrinking population this year? This is almost a decade earlier than what the UN predicted. We will see if China can maintain their economy without importing foreign workers like all other shrinking countries have done.
Yeah, China is actually interesting because they don't have inflation right now. Like every other country in the world, particularly the Western world, has 8 to 9% inflation, which is the highest in like 40 or 50 years. Something actually, and the Chinese only have 2% because the government essentially just controls the economy and doesn't allow business people and speculators to like run up the price of real estate and stuff like that. They basically do everything that the people at Forbes and Bloomberg think is going to be bad for the economy, but those people are just running cover for, well, Forbes and Bloomberg. You know, imagine that. You write for a publication named after Forbes and Bloomberg, and you write a bunch of voodoo economics, liberal capitalist lies that so happen to benefit your CEO and finance capital patron that your publication is named after. Imagine that. But yeah, it's very interesting. It will be interesting to see how they deal with this problem. I don't see the Chinese tolerating. They simply don't have enough of a local Zionist population that is burrowed in deep enough in their institutions to have this, but who knows what could happen in the future. But I think, Thomas, that the economy in the United States is going to basically implode. All the signs are there. I mean, do you think this is going to be like a resurgence or almost like a renaissance for us in terms of wakening our people up?
I certainly think that when you look at history, there are moments of severe change, right? Where things come to a certain crescendo, and depending on who you are and where you are, that is either emergency or opportunity, depending on what exactly it is. And we need to make sure that we are in a position as organizers, as people exalting an ideal, that should some great moment of change arrive, whether that is economic collapse or that is something good, heaven forbid something good happens in the historical trajectory from time to time, we are in a position where we can make that an opportunity to help, an opportunity to when the state becomes absent in the lives of our people because they no longer have money to feed all their armies of petty tyrants, then that is an opportunity for us to rush into that fold and reassert a semblance of peace and prosperity in the lives of those people who they have left behind. Something to that effect is stated in the manifesto, and it's always been something understood by the organization. So I think generally, as and we were talking earlier, as the government, specifically the police, gives more and more money and more interest to these petty political back and forths, what they're leaving behind is the actual civic structure, which is now ripe for reconquest. It is open for the taking, and all we have to do is create these revolutionary spaces that can be poised to leap further and further up the ladder of legitimacy until it is us who are exercising more legitimacy than the state itself.
Yes, I think that any revolution is going to be, and I mean a peaceful revolution, of course, relies on mostly being in the right place at the right time. And I think that by the way that we've positioned our respective vanguards, it's just a matter of time before we're leading mass movements. Now, I think that as the United States loses prestige and power globally, frankly, Thomas, and you and I especially need to know this, it's gonna suck for us specifically because every tyrannical system, again, if you look at Mosca and Pareto, the Italian historical theorists of changes in politics, what they find is that as an elite grows weaker, they become more vicious and tyrannical. And so, we can expect and we're seeing it actually, the more heat that there's put on us, the weaker they are. It's just the rule of history.
I can give you a historical example. I mean, I have no love for the young Ottomans or the young Turks, but as the empire was weakening, they were driven out. They were turned into exiles for the most part, driven out of the empire before they were able to come back in and take it over.
Exactly. And I think that ultimately, they're going to eventually, they're just going to, if we get big enough, they're just going to declare martial law, and then we're just going to have to deal with that as it comes. But, they're going to maybe ratchet up pressure, especially on leaders in these things. It is what it is. I mean, we're ready for it. And we're not afraid. So, any change is painful spurts, and we're just going to have to deal with it as it comes. Ride the tiger, baby. So the history is on our side. The winds are blowing the sail in our direction. It's just a matter of time before we are in charge. So that's all I'll say about that. Let's go to the next one.
Well, in the chime in donates another $10. Alex McNabb mentioned that the average American farmer is a senior citizen. Do you know this is true for all the developed world? Europe, South Korea, and Japan all have an average age of 55 plus for farmers. Young people in all these countries are leaving rural areas for cities and leaving farming behind. I mean, I can attest. I live in farming country. We know the local farmers here, and we do know some young farmers, but it's like 10 to 1 of boomers versus young people in terms of the farming age out here.
Yeah, I mean, you have to assume that they have some sort of contingency plan for the fact that young people don't want to be farmers. Part of that is also that the values in our countries, whether you're in any developed country, the values sort of they denigrate rural people. That's a universal thing, actually. Any developed country is going to develop rural people. I don't know why that is. There's a lot of social and political reasons for that, but it is what it is. And I think, as you see in places like Holland right now, farmers, because of the individualistic nature of farming, a lot of farmers have trouble politically organizing nowadays in liberal democracies. But I think once they get their act together and they start working together as like a farmers coalition, I mean, if you control the food supply, you can throw your weight around, my friend. And you're going to start seeing that in Holland. You see that in Holland. I think they're going to be successful. Whatever. I don't know the details of what's going on there, but when farmers want something and they show that they're willing to fight and resist, well, they're going to get what they want. And I think that's another important thing. Like, I thought that there was an element of false consciousness with some of the things like the truckers' strikes and stuff. There's, whatever the casus belli was not exactly ideal or correct even in many respects. But whatever you think of that, simply seeing power in action for the right that generally defers to institutions, even though we run none of them, the institutions are all run by our enemy. If people see things like, NJP outside in Akron or Fargo, or Patriot Front doing their 4th of July march on the street, or farmers going out and putting a policy decision to a halt, or truckers simply refusing to deliver products because of some grievance, these are white people, and they're going to start seeing that we can exercise power in ways that we never knew we could. Just seeing it happen is often enough to get to eating makes appetite. And so that is something, seeing it makes the appetite to do more and fight for more. So actually our job is getting easier now. Increasingly, it's not a matter of building the hardware, but of simply popping in the software, the good ideas, the correct revolutionary process strategy. That's our job now increasingly, which is a good thing. Oh,
I don't really have anything to add to that. I don't know if Thomas does, but if not, I'll move on to the Odyssey donation.
Alrighty.
Azur Arian 3379 donates $5. Thomas, first of all, great job of all the work UMPF does. Fuck the bad faith Zionist devil machine house niggers. Keep fighting the good fight. Out of curiosity, what is your favorite tokusatsu? Oh, this is Johnny. Okay. Out of curiosity, what is your favorite tokusatsu series / franchise? I feel like you would be into Super Sentai, what with the collective action themes. I could explain this if you want me to. If you don't want me to explain this, I perfectly understand.
Yeah, you actually cut out a bit, and I don't think I heard all of that question, but based on what I did hear, I think I'll be okay with a lacking explanation. But I believe it was supportive in some context. Again, we cut out a little bit, but I'm very much thankful and grateful for the support, and I do not have sufficient knowledge to answer the question as I believe I heard it.
Oh, I thought Thomas would blow us away with his knowledge of anime. I'm disappointed.
Oh, it was anime, was it? I didn't even know that.
I'm guessing it is.
Close enough. It's. Have you ever seen Power Rangers?
Yeah,
I'm familiar with Power Rangers.
I watch Power Rangers every day, of course.
That's basically what it is. Yeah, basically Japanese superheroes. He's calling you a Japanese superhero, is what he's saying.
Very good. Well, I've been called worse, so I'll take it.
I think it's a compliment. Yes.
Johnny's a good kid. $14.88 from Tam. Thank you, Tam.
Thank you, Tam.
$100 from Political Bomb. Thanks for the show. Keep up the good work.
Hell yeah, Political Bomb. Thanks a lot, buddy. That's a very generous donation.
$14.88 from Icosphere. Hail NJP. Hail Patriot Front.
Thank you.
Very good.
To you.
$30 from Phantom Soul. Thank you, Phantom Soul.
Bless you, Phantom Soul. Keeping the lights on at the People's Square.
Oh yeah.
Running out the homeless people on the People's Square. That's very bad.
Yeah, we have to keep it the People's Square, not the People's Cardboard Box here.
Yeah.
So,
yes. Thank you, sir.
$3 from KCS, NJP, and Patriot Front. Finna the link up for real.
Yeah, I mean, we have some communication, but that is privileged.
Yeah, we are generally against like planning things out in the open and in public.
Yeah,
That's generally not how we go about things here.
not
So.
Learned that lesson once or twice. Yeah.
That's not. It's not a, as they used to call pal mal. It's not a. But yeah. Anyway.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so KCS said, "Thank you, Patriot Front. You are true heroes." It was $5 from Stress. It was the last one I read, but yeah, $3 from KCS. Thank you, Patriot Front. You are true heroes.
You're the true hero, KCS.
Thank you, KCS. Indeed.
$20 from Lord Wolfshield. We will build statues of Stryker and Rousseau someday. Hopefully, one of the statues will be of the infamous Stryker strut.
I mean, it wouldn't be hard. You take the RoboCop statue in Detroit, and you just kind of put a pompadour on it, and I think you're. I think you got it. Once you do that.
All right. Whoops. Wrong one. There we go. And $5 from DeWitt. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you, DeWitt.
I'm just gonna call him Trent because I don't know if that's the last name or if he's just doing a goofy thing there. But the $20 from Trent, and he just says G.
G.
Right back at you.
Right back at you, buddy. Thanks a lot.
That's all the donations. Oh, here we go. There we go. $5 from Strasser. Thomas is our white Power Ranger. Stryker needs to teach him the Stryker strut attack.
Well,
I've
next time
actually
I
been
see
practicing.
Oh, good. Good stuff. Good stuff. You need to be strutting at the head of the Patriot Front column, telegraphing our, what? I mean, I don't even. You know what's funny? It came out really crazy in that picture, and I think it was because I was like, they caught me. The photographer caught me at an angle, and when I was like looking up because I forgot what I was doing, but I mean it's not that exaggerated.
Stryker, that's how you walk. Do you remember the first time? Do you remember the first time we met you at the first NJP I was at with my wife?
Yeah.
And you gave her your jacket. She at the end of the night, and remember, she doesn't drink, so this is just her being her normal self. She walked around the entire place we were at, doing an imitation of your strut in your jacket. And I believe it was DinoCon who said that she looked like she looked like Pinocchio walking his way to school.
I honestly don't notice it. I really don't, but I guess that's just how I walk.
There might be some exaggeration, but that is how you walk, man. I've met you enough times to know that's actually how you walk.
Oh wow, okay, yeah.
In the defense, I can understand how from experience, a single frame of a video can certainly look a little bit out of context.
Oh Jesus!
Who knows?
Don't get me started on hit pics. Like all of my enemies have like hit pics where they take like stills of you and stuff. Yes. Oh yeah, hit pics. If you're a public personality, that if you notice, like whenever the media is writing about someone they don't like, or some troll is like writing about someone they don't like, they'll take the absolute most unflattering picture of the person, whether it's Donald Trump or me or you, and use that as the picture every time. It's really childish, actually.
Yeah, it's no, I've seen that picture. It's the one picture they have of me at Charlottesville that they like to use, even though I'm quite unrecognizable. But yes, of course, we're all familiar.
Yeah.
Well, here's a very relevant question for you, Thomas. Right here, $5 from Doomer. Just wondering what are let me try this again. Just wondering what are some of the fitness requirements to join Patriot Front.
Very good. So, obviously, to join, the fitness requirement is that you are willing, able to improve, and you are open to training regularly. You do not have to be in a certain place when you join. We only ask that you are open to improvement. So that is the requirement. But once you get in order to stay in good standing, there are requirements that relate to having a decent mile time and being able to do a number of body weight exercises such as push-ups, sit-ups, crunches, pull-ups, to reasonable levels. And obviously, we have internal structures and teams that work with everybody everybody who needs it, of course, in order to meet those standards and then excel beyond that, because we don't just want people to meet the bare minimum. We want to set them up with a lifestyle of fitness and progression. And, actually I was recognizing some of the guys who showed up at the Independence Day action completely unrecognizable to how they joined. These guys had lost 40, 50, 60, upwards of 100 pounds since they joined, and they did it with the trainers in the organization. They did it with all this dieting advice, and the organization had a really positive influence in their life. So the standard, obviously, as long as you are not 800 pounds within reason, join, and we'll help you out however we can. And the only thing that we ask is that you are willing and able to improve, because everybody that comes through that door, they got to be open to being stronger, being faster, being smarter, and being more active.
Yeah, I mean, in my political organization, we're kind of doing something a little different than Patriot Front. Like, it's not the same frequency. But I will say that it's good that you guys, because this actually will improve your life. Like, if you're a guy in your 20s in America, more times than not, you're going to be sort of depressed and, frankly, hard up for women in some cases. You see, like, the incel thing is a huge problem with, and there's some characters out there that try to, like, we all know who they are, that actually try to keep their members as incels because they're easier to manipulate. But if you join Patriot Front and you get on their exercise regimen, and you get fit, and you're gonna have more confidence in yourself as a man, in your physical strength, and whether you can win a fight, protect your families, things like that. And two, and I know, like, so the average age in your group is in your 20s, right? You guys are mostly 20s.
I would say about early mid 20s. Obviously, we have outliers. We have guys down to 18, and we have people even up to 40. With some exceptions in the age limit.
Right. In my organization, it's more guys in their 30s, kind of married. You're gonna have a little daddy weight and stuff, but so it's different. But I'll say this for a dude, especially in their 20s, like, guess what? Like, you're gonna feel better when you lose weight and get fit. You're gonna get a lot more attention from women. You're gonna get a lot more girls. People are gonna simply, I mean, it's sad if you want to say it's sad. Maybe it's not sad, but people are just gonna respect you more in your day-to-day life. And so it's good that and Patriot Front has these standards for people to improve. And like you said, you don't turn people away just because they're overweight, but they have to be open to improve. And of course, now, correct me if I'm right, not everyone has to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, right?
No, actually, you're mistaken. They have to look exactly like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh, okay.
At the in-person interview. No, of course. And, obviously it's all about self-improvement. It's about being reasonable, because nobody comes in perfect. And it's a really good thing to see people progress. It's a really good thing to see people create these types of bonds. And, if you want to live in the world that we want to create, being in shape and healthy, eating right and acting like is going to add an extra 20 years onto your lifespan. And then, hopefully that's time that you get to spend in a world that more closely resembles our ideals and our virtues. So all the more reason to be healthy and start early, start often.
Right. Yeah. Well, so what is the PF routine? What is, like, your car's routine?
Oh, well, it certainly depends. We have trainers, and they'll do custom programs and pieces of advice for individuals depending on where they are and what their strengths or weaknesses are. There are people who are a little bit too skinny. There are people who are obviously too fat, and there's people who are in the middle and just kind of generally weak. But the biggest thing that we, impress upon guys is dieting. Obviously, you want to get away from the processed foods. You want to get away from junk food. You want to get away from alcohol. You want to start counting your calories, and you want to, when it comes to exercise, it's all about strength. It's all about improvement, progressive overload. You want to really make sure you're getting your form correct and focus on a few key exercises and slowly build those up. And as you get more experience, obviously you expand into more, and you can grow and grow and grow your fitness repertoire. And at a certain point of, base capability, or even very early on, we encourage guys to get into martial arts. You should go to a jiu-jitsu gym or a boxing gym so you can start learning a discipline as well as just a basis for fitness. And it is a transformative process, to say the least.
Yeah. No, that sounds good. Especially guys in their 20s with all this pent-up energy. You can often get into mischief and no good. So it's good to get young men into something positive,
People pay thousands of dollars for the kind of training that we are actually impressing upon young men. It's like, it's mandatory.
Yeah, that's
so
pretty awesome.
It's a great deal. It's a fantastic.
It's pretty awesome. Yeah. Okay. Next one, Borzoi.
We got another one that came in here. It's $14.88 from BioWarg. Will we ever hear a Borzett and McNabb podcast on the healthcare system again? It was a long time ago. Still one of the most memorable. So for people who don't know what he's referring to, back at the end of 2020, my wife and McNabb and me and another guy, we did a hyper podcastism that was ostensibly on the limits of medicine by Ivan Illich, but really what it was about was getting some medical people together to do some medical stories. And I think they're looking at possibly getting McNabb on in the future for Dreamweavers. Don't hold me to that, but I think that there might be some medical stuff coming down the pipeline in the future for Dreamweavers. So there you go.
Yeah. Remember, Borzett has her show we hosted on this channel, and it's actually it's 3 women, but they're actually the one in a millennium smart women. No, I'm joking. They are they're really smart, and it's actually worth listening to even. And if a lot of even WN content for women is just fucking stupid. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't want to piss on anyone, but we in the NJP sphere, NJP TRS sphere, we have really intelligent women. Dissident Housewives is another great show.
Yep, that's their sister show right there.
Yeah, and these are not just silly Billy stuff that a lot of women's content is, because I find that a lot of we men sometimes assume women are a lot dumber than they are. They're actually not. Like there's a lot of dumb women, but one of the reasons why many women are stupid is that they don't have anything intellectually stimulating to engage with. And I find that the kind of culture and politics and history and miscellaneous stuff, they have stuff about babies and stuff too, and being mothers and stuff too on on these shows. But ultimately, these women are super intelligent and definitely worth listening to. So listen to women.
Listen to women, yes. But there were some people when the show first got started, and this always happens with podcasts. Like the first couple of episodes can be a little bit rougher as people find their voice. I mean, I don't recommend people ever listen to the early pause button episodes because I was still finding my voice on that. But once you find your stride, then you kind of find your voice. So for people who were trying to get the women in their lives to listen to Dreamweavers and we're having a couple problems with the first couple episodes, I highly recommend try the latest episode 7. They had Aaron Art on, the guy that we actually interviewed a couple months ago, and they did an amazing conversation on art. So go check that out. I think it's I think the title is Diversity Blah, but it's episode 7, the Dream.
Yeah, Emily Yukis is on it. Joan is on it, and Emily is hilarious. So it's funny. I mean, it's honestly better than 99% of other comparable podcasts, male or female. So definitely, we don't host things on our TPS channel. These are all shows that we curate. These are good shows that you're going to get. So definitely check out even Greg's podcast, his latest one, Prussian Socialism. It's about Kalergi, some really interesting facts about the history of the European Union and Kalergi and who he was, his life. It's really amazing and well researched.
The Kalergi plan is often used as like an entry level talking point to some of the stuff. So if you got somebody who's poking around on this stuff, Prussian socialism, the latest episode, great way to entice them and see and have them go down the rabbit hole on this stuff. Since Greg will give you a much fuller picture of Kalergi's life than what you'll get from a Wikipedia skim.
Definitely. I mean, the fact that listen, the groups in the what was the alt-right had way more groups, right? But there are two pro-white groups, like main ones, right? And Patriot Front is good. They're doing a lot of good physical stuff. It's very important. And we're raising the standard. You guys are raising the standard on it. We're raising the standard on feeding your mind. All of this stuff goes into the same pot and ultimately leads to raising the standards in this movement in general for mind, body, and spirit. So this is all great developments. So we're at, I think, do we have any more questions?
Just one more. It's not a question. So $3 from Bad Opticon, Justice for Jupiter, Justice for Ethan, and the Injustice or Dictator Will.
Yes. Well, I'd call it more of maybe an ethnocrat, but we will see. But yes, indeed, we will get justice for these people. This isn't over, and so it's good. Thank you for that comment. Anything else?
No, that's it.
All righty. Any things you want to plug, Thomas?
I just want to say that I'm really happy for y'all having me on again, especially on such short notice after the Independence Day March. And of course, if anybody is interested, you can check us out at patriotfront.us. We have new updates to the website, which allow you to view a lot of our social media updates in the new Action tab. And we will be producing more videos and more content up on our other social media pages to do with Independence Day very shortly. So please be on the lookout for that. That is going to be very elucidating content for those of you who are interested and or intrigued in the events of the action, which are quite interesting all throughout. So again, people should follow us. And if you believe that everything or anything that we said in the demonstration and any of our written materials or in this show has been to your liking, to your interest, you should really consider sending in an application and joining up with these ranks of men. I certainly believe you, dear listener, you can make it. You can make it work. So that's my final note. And just once more, again, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you for coming on, Thomas. Good luck with your group. All right, play us out.
Okay. Gonna make it status reinstated.